Thanks for having me.
I just want to tell a quick story of why I reached out, and it was because I was kind of scrolling on TikTok looking for people to invite and talk to that I think are interesting, and I've seen a little video you made about during your flight. I think it was Alaska Airlines. You said you were
Mhm.
shooting a little video of the aurora lights, which are mesmerizing. You also took some amazing stills, and I think it's one of the main things that attracted me to the phenomena of stuff that are almost, it doesn't seem like it's from Earth.
Mhm.
And then of course the stars, which is something I've been attracted to. I think I shouldn't be special in that. Like everybody's kind of like mesmerized by the stars, and every time we have a moment to look up, we're at awe of what is this.
Yeah,
It's a
totally.
real big thing that just puts you down in your place and says, okay, we're just a little small thing
Yeah.
in this huge galaxy. And if you have time to actually sink into it and let your mind drift to the fact that we're just lost in space on this rock, uh, it's uh, it's a fun thing, but also it's overwhelming at times. So let me ask you, how did you get into photography? If you don't mind giving a little bit of intro on yourself, but specifically then kind of roll us into how you got into photography and then why the niche, which is so specific. There's
Yeah.
photographers
Yeah.
of so many kinds, and then you roll into astrophotography. Why is that?
So I got into photography. I have a friend who does real estate photography. He has his own business and everything. And I saw him, doing what he does. This is probably around 2015 is when he started with photography, and ever since then, I was always interested. How cameras work and everything, and I asked him to teach me, and so
Hmm.
uh, around 2018, I went with him full time, doing real estate photography, portrait photography, things like that. Um, and there was one night where a group of friends and I went to Joshua Tree to stargaze, and
Nice.
like you said, you take time and you look up and you let your mind wander. And I was thinking, I have to. I felt the need to show people, like this is what we're missing, in the city and everything
Right.
with all this light pollution. Um, so I was thinking, is there a way to capture this, in a photo? Um, and so I did a little bit of research, not too much, but I went out next time. I didn't even have my own equipment then, so uh, same friend and I went out to Joshua Tree, and I borrowed his camera and everything. Some techniques I learned that weren't very good, but I got stars, on the back of the screen. Wasn't anything significant. It wasn't even the Milky Way. It was just a star field. And I was
Right.
like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. Um, and I did some more research, and I wanted to get into it more. And eventually, I got my own camera and everything like that, just a simple DSLR. And that was when summer was coming around. So you got the Milky Way core, which is something so bright you could see with the naked eye.
Right.
And it was from there I saw the Milky Way core pop up on the back of my camera screen. I was like, well, good, well this is you know
Now we're getting
amazing.
places.
Yeah, yeah, right. And from there I was hooked. Yeah, this has been like the main focus of my life for the past year and a half. Every
Wow.
clear night, I go out in the backyard, set up my telescope, and uh, photograph the night sky, and it's been amazing. Yeah, and there's you see these objects, and as someone new to astrophotography, I thought this stuff was only able to be captured by space telescopes, things like
Yeah,
Hubble and
like the
stuff like
Hubble
that.
or yeah.
But yeah, these things are so huge, we can just step outside and capture it, from wherever we are. That's really amazing.
It's wild the fact that we can even do that as what you'd call, not non-commercialized individuals. Just your ordinary civilian can go ahead and buy some gear
Right.
online, and all of a sudden you're shooting um, nebulas and some stuff you've been showing. It's insane. But before we go dive deep into this, my question is, or more of a comment. It's such an extreme hard turn to go from real estate photography
Yeah. Yeah.
to stars. It's almost like what the heck? It's first of all, I feel it's like it's so much more of a an art. I think
Hmm.
not to at all disrespect real estate photographers. I've done that with drones and all kinds of stuff. There's
Hmm.
money into it, and you know you can do a better job than others and be your own creative thing. But it's
There's a
just
boundary.
such a different thing.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
only so
there
much
is
you
a
can do
boundary,
with photographing a house.
right?
Um,
Why the hard turn? Like it's an extreme thing, and also some might say it's financially irresponsible to go to the stars, where you
yeah,
know that most areas of photography are where the money's made.
right. And this is something that's still a hobby to me. So I definitely don't think it's gonna be like oh, this is a new career for me. Absolutely not. I'm still doing real estate photography, other types of photography. And I just kind of combined, my passions for photography and the cosmos into one hobby that I didn't even know existed.
Right.
And like I said, it's been amazing. I love photography. I love capturing, moments um, that will probably never happen again.
Right.
And like I said, I love space. I love the cosmos, and you know, now that I found a way to put those two together, it's been amazing. And I found a great community of other astrophotographers, other like-minded individuals, and it's been great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, my favorite thing about getting into something new is finding a community,
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like it really helps diminish kind of borders around disagreements about politics and stupid things that don't really matter, and all of a sudden you're in like this awesome group of people that all they want to do. And for my case, it's like dirt bike riding, or for photographers it's photographers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And everything kind of like fades away. It
Right.
doesn't really matter if you're into this or into that or whatever you do at home. Right now we're doing this thing we're all interested in, and the power of community is pretty cool. But before I go completely off track, let me go back to something you said, that also leads to a couple of questions. So you said capturing a moment and how you had interest in that. And it seems like most people would agree, especially people that don't know how to shoot really good pictures just because we're not experienced, that capturing a moment on a camera is much harder than most people would think. And I'm not talking about somebody holding an ice cream and having a good time at the amusement park. I'm talking about view, a scenery, landscape,
Right.
something amazing, a sunset that blows your mind, right? You take a picture and it just looks so stupid on your phone, of course, but even on a decent camera. So it's an art to take something that you see and turn it into something that other people can see through your camera. It's not just going to happen for you. So how do you overcome that challenge?
Right. Yeah, there's a learning curve for sure. And once you get past that, then you can kind of mess with ways, when you're editing that photo of a sunset. A lot of times people just say, this is what it looked like, and this is how I'm going to edit it. But other people,
Right.
once they get past that curve, you can kind of mess with things a little bit more, and you can sort of make it, how it made you feel. So like when I take a photo of a nightscape with foreground and the Milky Way and everything, and if it's like a cold night or something like that, I tend to lean towards the blues a little bit more, to
Hmm.
sort of translate that. Hey, that night was pretty cold, and it just
Right.
helps keep that memory alive in a way of how that
I like.
night made you feel, so that whenever you look at that photo, not only is it beautiful and other people can enjoy it, but it brings back those memories of that day or that night for you.
Right.
um, but like I said, it's really just a learning curve, and it's a lot of trial and error. But that's every hobby. It's a lot of practice, and you're gonna mess up, but every once in a while you're just gonna get that photo that goes, that makes you go, wow, like that. That's why I do this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, talking about the stars, uh, most people could agree that, going out and do some, urban photography, they might shoot some graffiti or a skater or, the beach and some people laughing. I feel like that's like the classic thing that everybody can kind of pick up and do right away. Join a group, go shoot some stuff. But the stars, I mean, where do you even start? What do you aim at? Like, okay, I get the moon, kind of everybody can
Yeah,
find.
yeah,
After that, it gets so tricky. Like, I cannot point out Pluto, you know? And
right.
where do you go when you start, obviously you went from stargazing at Joshua Tree to, deeper and deeper and taking the pictures you're taking today
Mm,
that are, I don't even know how many light years away. That's a lot of very, very delicate aim and intention. It doesn't just happen by accident, right? You don't aim at a, mindless spot in the sky. So how do you go
right.
about finding what you want, and does it correlate with your interest in space and the cosmos itself?
Yeah, when I first started it, that's how it was for me. I'm like, well, this spot looks cool. There's a lot of stars here. Let's see. And again, I only
See what
got
happens.
stars. Yeah, and I didn't even know
Right.
these deep sky objects and nebulae and galaxies and stuff like that even were obtainable with amateur gear. Whether it be
Hmm.
my larger telescope or a DSLR and a lens. So when I got more into astrophotography and I knew I wanted to go deeper, um, I downloaded an app. The app I use is Stellarium, and that's sort of like a
Stellarium.
Stellarium Plus.
I'll see if I can link it in the description for people that want to get into this.
Yeah, yeah, it's free. You could pay like $3 for um, the extra version,
Hmm.
but it shows you almost every cataloged object in the night sky, whether that be galaxies, nebulae, the planets, the moon, stuff like that. And so downloading that, it allows me to see, what objects are available to shoot, where I'm at and at what time too. So you can mess with like,
Hmm.
what day, what time and everything. It shows you, if it's going to be a new moon, full moon.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah. So that's
Can
where
you
I started.
imagine walking into the Library of Alexandria and just be like, "Hey, look at this thing. It just,
Right.
yeah, all these things you're trying to calculate and whatnot. It's just, yeah, just look up. It'll tell you exactly where it's gonna be and
Yeah.
when and what it's called."
Yeah. You can just move your
It's
phone
mind
around and
blowing.
yeah, it's amazing.
Wow.
But yeah, and there's so many, you mentioned, finding where I want to go in astrophotography. And
Right.
even in astrophotography, there are still a few different niches you
Sure.
can get into. There's lunar and planetary imaging. There's deep sky, which is what I mainly focus on. Um, there's nightscape, including more wide field images, including foreground and stuff like that. So there's a lot you can do even when you get into this extremely small niche of photography. There's still more paths you can take.
Right. Yeah.
So
There's always a step deeper, and
right, right.
it's interesting. I saw that you did take some pictures of the moon, even though you're saying it's not your main, um, focus. Um, it's that's the one place. Let's call it a place, right? That's the star, right?
Mm.
And it's so crazy that relatively cheap equipment gets you pictures that make you feel like you can touch it,
Yeah,
like you can see the
absolutely.
craters and you can totally see the detail in it. Given the correct and the proper lighting from the sun hitting it, it's the thing that falls the most, in my opinion, to the description of, you know, feels so close, like you can touch it, but really it's so far, far away.
Right.
It's kind of annoying almost because it feels like we should be able to just jump over there and pay a visit, but at the
Mm.
same time, seems like it's been quite a while since we've been there. And for the conspiracy theories, if we've been there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely have. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get to the moon. And when it comes to shooting
Hopefully,
it,
we can go again soon.
yeah, yeah, I hope so too. When it comes to shooting it though, it's definitely, the moon is a relatively easy target for beginner, astrophotographers or even beginner photographers in general. And it really comes down to the technique, how you shoot it. You can get a lot, you can give two people the same equipment, and one person who doesn't really know what they're doing can get a photo of it, decent, but you give your other piece of equipment to someone who really knows what they're doing, and you can get a lot
Right.
more detailed image. So it all comes down to the technique, and that's why you just got to keep learning and just keep practicing. So
Sure. No, I totally get that. In most skills that I've tried to acquire, it's been annoying how with the same instrument, whether it's a motorcycle or a guitar, somebody can just extract so much more value and wow. And I agree, it's practice, technique. Yes, there's raw talent involved, but also if you
Hmm.
practice, you're gonna master something. As long as you are interested and desire to get there, it's gonna happen. Let me ask you about seeing the aurora. I don't even know what's the percentage of people that ever um, seen it per
Hmm.
living generation that we have, kind of going cycling through Earth. Probably it's a small amount, but it seems like one of the most extreme wonders that we have available here on Earth. Um, if you think about it, it's relatively simple, physically speaking, as a phenomena, but visually, I feel like it's almost divine. How was your experience with it?
Yeah. So my dad and I booked a trip to Alaska, and originally we wanted to go to Norway, but the country shut down because of COVID and everything. So we're like, okay,
Mm,
well, where's somewhere else, we could see the aurora.
right.
And we looked, and Alaska was one of the best places to go, and it was in the United States, so nice and easy and everything. So we decided to go there.
Mm,
Luckily, we had like one good night of perfect weather. Um, a couple more nights after that, it was a little bit cloudy, but we still saw it. And then it was cloudy for the entire, rest of the trip. But that one night, the first night we got there, where it was perfectly clear, we told each other like, I'd be okay if the rest of the trip was cloudy, because we saw it one night and it was great.
it was that good.
Yeah, it's definitely not what people think. When you look at photos and everything, it's so bright and it's so colorful, but that's what the camera sees. And the camera
Mm,
sees a lot more color and detail than our eyes can,
sure.
which is unfortunate, but it was still really, really beautiful. It wasn't as color saturated as I thought it would be. So it was kind of
Mm,
like a grayish, greenish.
mm,
Um, that's just how our eyes work. When objects are super
right.
dim, they tend to look more black and white than color. Um,
Right.
but like I said, there was still structure, and it was still kind of like waving around, dancing a little bit.
That's
And
great.
it was really cool. But I will say the flight out was easily the best viewing experience we've got. Um, that
That's the
trip.
one you took some videos that you put on TikTok.
Right, right. Um, and we were up 30,000 feet or so. We were 30,000 feet closer to the aurora than we were on the surface.
Right.
And not to mention, it was a really, really good. I think it was like a KP4 or something like that, which is pretty good on the scale for
Mm,
intensity. In that time, when I pulled the camera away from the window because I was like, I wanted to see what it looked like to the naked eye. That time, I did see a bright green and a lot more detail. It was so, you know, it was much more what I thought it would be like than what I saw on the ground.
right.
And it was amazing. It was just so bright and everything. And you saw the photos I got too. It was, you know,
They're
they were.
mind blowing,
It
and
was so bright. It was blowing out the. I would take an exposure and the aurora would be blown out. It was so bright. I had to dial
that's
down the
crazy.
exposure. It was insane. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, based on your experience, sounds like the best way to view the aurora is to book a night flight where you
Yeah.
know
Take
it's
that
going to
red
be
eye
a nice
flight.
clear sky.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
That's pretty cool. But you said, being 30,000 feet or so, closer to it. Do you know, generally speaking, where does it occur, like as far as altitude?
Yeah. It's extremely high. I forget what layer of the atmosphere it's in, but it goes anywhere from I think 250 to 450 miles above the surface
Oh,
of the
wow.
Earth. So it is really, really far
Very
away.
far.
And
Wow.
I think the altitude, of course, I didn't really notice like physically being closer to the aurora, but it definitely helped, because there was no light pollution, there was no,
Right.
um, the air was thinner up there too, so that probably helped.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just
yeah,
being pulled away from the light pollution to that extent, I'm sure has to help.
yeah.
Which was actually the next thing on my list to ask you. You live in California, right?
Hmm.
It's the the worst pollution, first of all, just in the air, and then light pollution is horrible as well. So how do you deal with that, given that basically astrophotography should be the last genre you go to pick when you live in California. But
Yeah,
what
I
do you do
kind of
to combat
shot
that?
myself in the foot, choosing that hobby where I live.
Right.
But uh, yeah, so I'll say this first: there's no substitute for a good dark sky, but there are ways to get around the nasty light pollution here.
Mm.
I think in my light pollution isn't too bad. I'm kind of in a smaller town, so there's a scale called the Bortle scale, which measures
Mm.
how bad the light pollution is, and it goes from 1 to 9. 1 being the best, no light pollution, and 9 being the worst, like LA stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I think I'm about 7, so it's
Even in
bad, but
your smaller town. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, 6 to 7, I would say. Um,
Mm.
but what I do is I use certain filters called narrowband filters, and they isolate certain wavelengths of light on the visible spectrum. So I use 3 filters, which show the most prominent gases in nebulae, which is
Oh
hydrogen,
wow.
oxygen, and sulfur. I use those 3 filters. I take, basically, I end up getting 3 different photos and combining them to make a full color image. And that way, those
So it's kind of like
filters,
bracketing for astrophotographers.
right? Um, uh, and I use a monochrome camera too, so it's more sensitive to light. Um, and those filters isolate, just the wavelength you want to see, and it excludes everything else, meaning all that light pollution. So, it's really like the light pollution isn't there, but I would still get a better image going out to a dark sky and shooting. Um, but yeah, and that's what I usually do in the backyard. But when I go out to Joshua Tree or whatever, I just I shoot all natural color, things like that. Same camera and everything, but just red, green, and blue filter. Normal red, green, and blue filters rather than these chemical
Right.
specific narrowband filters. But yeah,
Right.
light pollution is a huge issue, and I think it's not only a problem for astrophotographers and astronomers, but it's a problem for uh, normal people who aren't in that hobby, and animals too. And I think
Sure.
it definitely needs to be addressed. And there are towns and national parks and everything who are trying to combat the light pollution and are actually doing a pretty good job of it. Simple things like putting shields over street lights so that the light doesn't go up, rather it stays shining
Mm.
down where it's meant
It
to
seems
be.
simple enough.
Yeah, and that's helped people going from a Bortle 8 or 9 sky all the way down to a 5. And people reporting they can even see the Milky Way now. So it
Wow.
helps, and I think yeah, more cities need to start taking an effort in considering not only normal pollution from fossil fuels, but light pollution too.
Right. For super good point.
Yeah,
It's it, I think it's not even in our awareness, and it's good that you're talking about it because um, for me, like, yeah, coming up with an idea on how to reduce light pollution is it's not even on the agenda. There's so many things that are getting pushed politically and
right.
um, from the capitalist point of view and whatnot that people are like, okay, what light? Okay, we'll talk about that later. There's other
Yeah,
things, but honestly, it's a huge impact on nature, and we do think on how we impact nature. Most people, the first thing they think about is plastic bags in the ocean, but we do so much more.
right,
And to
right.
think that that's even an issue, light itself, that we're causing so much of it, and it's messing with the ecosystems around us, is I think it escapes most of our awarenesses. So it's important
Yeah,
that you bring it up.
yeah, it definitely
Um,
does.
the whole story about the aurora did remind me of something that it's a disappointment story, so that's a spoiler. But I live in Colorado, and there was this. You probably, given that you've been in astrophotography, maybe you remember this. There was some um, magnetic storm forecast. I think maybe a year or two ago,
I do remember that.
and
Yeah,
they said that it might be visible all the way to like Colorado.
yeah,
But they said if you want good viewing, you should go to Montana. So me and my wife packed up the car like super fast and just hit the road. I think we drove like 9, 10 hours. Um, and then while we're like 4 hours out, they're like, "Oh, by the way, Yeah, the forecast was wrong. It's not going to be visible anywhere in the States.
Wow.
So, but I felt okay because I was like, yeah, if we could even had a chance to see it, it was worth the drive. And
Mm,
we did make it to the spot we were going to make it to because I was like, fuck it, we're already all this way.
right.
And it was just this like dark spot on the light pollution map that was basically pitch black. There's nothing. Like as soon
That's
as you turn
awesome.
the car lights off, it's everything is visible above you, and it's
Hmm.
amazing. We were just laying at the back of the truck, and you let your eyes get used to it, and it's a universe, it's a galaxy, the whole cosmos, like you said. It's something that we're so forgetful of, but it's up there all the time,
Yeah.
every second of our lives.
Yeah. I think it's
It's
something we
amazing.
need to come back to, and I think it's something that astrophotographers and specifically are trying to like spread awareness about. Because
Sure.
it's that's where we came from. That's it's a part of us. It's a part of our history. We've used the night sky
It is the
for
story.
thousands of
Yeah.
years. Yeah, we tell stories with it, and I think it's just so important to get that back.
Sure.
That's definitely one of my goals is in this hobby, and I think I can speak for all astrophotographers when I say this is uh, we all try and spread awareness about this issue as much as we can. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's
When you say
definitely.
this issue, you mean specifically what, light pollution, or just generally people not being so aware of the fact that we live in a huge universe that's outside the
Uh,
US, it's outside the world?
yeah, mainly light pollution, but we try and tell people, that's why we share our work. It's like, hey, go outside and look up,
Right. Yeah.
because it's there and it's there, and people, a lot of people just forget about it sometimes, and it's such a nice, it's a free light show pretty much. Um,
Sure.
yeah, it's amazing, and I think people need to acknowledge that more.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, it's more than a light show. Like for most, stargazers, I feel like it's it's a place to actually escape
Yeah.
this place, this life, this what seems to be so meaningless, which is the next thing on my list I want to ask you about. Because the more you look up, it seems to me, the more you realize how small this is, this whole thing, and the stuff we have, and the people we know, and the rules we made up to go along with it, and all these stories that humanity came up with along the way, all the way to what you would call today modern life. It's it dwarfs when you look up, and it makes no sense that we give this any importance at all when there's such huge galaxies out there that are infinite. How do you feel
Yeah.
about that? How do you feel about living on Earth?
Yeah, I've definitely given it a lot of thought, maybe too much, but I've had that like existential crisis, like, oh man, we like you said, we were so small and like meaningless,
Right.
but I kind of looked on the bright side and said, hey, that just means our problems that are going on right now are that small too, that small and that meaningless as well,
Right.
and in a way, um, photographing the night skies kind of made me feel more connected with it, to where it doesn't feel too scary anymore. It's not, it doesn't make me feel that small, because I'm just that much more connected with it, connected
Mm,
with the night sky, connected with, just nature in general. And so it's really helped me a lot. It's really humbling too, just knowing that all
sure.
this is out there and we're just some tiny, like you said, just some rock floating in space. So it's
Yeah.
been an eye opener. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that you say that. It's an interesting perspective that because you familiarize yourself with it and got comfortable with with the galaxy, and um, orient yourself better with it in it, um, that you got comfortable and less, reduced your sensation of just like this huge infinite is, making me so small and useless in it, and
Mm.
meaningless rather, but feel more comfortable as a guest, in this huge thing. But I just can't help when I look up on a nice dark sky and have some time to look up at the stars. I can't help not to feel that whatever this is, what we're doing here, it's stupid.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
No, I totally agree. You know, a lot of what we're doing right now is like, in the grand scheme of things, it's just so pointless and small. You know, there's so much more, you know, stuff we could be doing that benefits, you know, humanity in general. And I just feel like space in general sort of gives people that humbling experience that, you know, there's a there's an interesting phenomena called, I forget what it's called, but when astronauts go to space for the first time and they see the Earth, and they see, you know,
I can't
the
imagine
vacuum
that.
of space and everything, they come back with this newfound perspective on life, and a lot of them become more environmentally active, politically active too, trying to, you know, spread awareness about
I think
certain
I've heard
things that
something
are
about
important to
that
them.
in the One Strange Rock, the documentary with Will Smith. Have you watched that?
I have not.
Highly
That
recommend it for
sounds.
you
Yeah, I'll
since
have to check
it's
it out.
kind of based around astronauts and their viewing of the Earth. So it
Mm,
goes back and forth, and of course they bring Will Smith to um, host the whole thing, so that makes it all the more dramatic.
yeah.
But they got a bunch of these astronauts, and they're telling the story of Earth through their perspective. It's super interesting. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah,
No,
this
you're fine.
feeling of humility, this new thing that Earth actually matters. It's a living thing, living and breathing thing.
Yeah, it's um, there's a really good speech by Carl Sagan, you know, and he basically says that everyone who
Mm.
has ever lived, you know, in existence in humanity has lived on this blue dot, you know. Um,
Right.
yeah, and we have to cherish it and take care of it. And I think you know, space sort of gives us that perspective, you know. When you're up there, you don't see borders, you don't see, you know, anything like that. It's just we're all, you know, we're all one people, you know, hanging out on this rock in the middle of space.
Right. Yeah.
So,
It's funny. I brought this up on the last podcast. There's a song. I grew up in Israel, and there's this song in Hebrew. It's called "Lost in Space,"
mm,
and just translated, um, freely, it basically, explains how silly it is, all this noise that we're making for people that are just lost in space together.
yeah, yeah,
The whole
exactly.
conflict between Israelis and Palestinians and wars around the world and all this bullshit. That really, it's just a manifestation of our imagination. Our stories are.
Hmm.
Most of our disagreements really aren't based in true reality. They're stories that we tell each other, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
stories about religions, about borders, like you said, about money. Those are all concepts that don't really exist in reality. They only exist in our minds.
yeah. We just made it up.
And
Yeah,
right, and once you stop imagining them, they don't really have value. Like if me
yeah.
and you decided that there's no such thing as money, we can actually live in a world where money is not a thing. It
Hmm.
doesn't exist. There's paper, but me and you decided that it's worth something.
Yeah.
Or somebody told us to think that way anyway. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Carl Sagan because I have my cousin got me like this big candle, like a saint. Those saint candles
Yeah.
of Carl Sagan.
Oh, that's great. I need one of those. That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And yeah, it's he's such a classic. I don't know why he's like the ultimate, Cosmos guy. I
Yeah.
don't think he really has anybody that inherited his stand. Some people say Neil, DeGrasse Tyson, but Carl Sagan
I
has
was
his
just
own
gonna
spot.
say him. Yeah, but yeah, Carl Sagan is on a he's still on a different level, but Neil comes close. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um. Yeah. Great
yeah,
guy.
Neil is good. He's a little impulsive.
Yeah.
He gets angry fast.
Yeah. Um. Yeah.
It's
I think
interesting.
it's cool that, you know, people like them, you know, bring the complicated reality of astrophysics and science down to like a normal person, you know, level. You know, and spread
It's
awareness
amazing.
about what's around us and everything like that. And yeah, it's important, you know, because we all can't afford to go to space and to see that, you know, perspective firsthand. So I think it's
I hope
important
we
for.
do. We
Yeah,
can soon, hopefully.
I hope
Maybe not
so.
me and you, but maybe a generation close. Or maybe when we're old men, we can take like a shuttle and just go see the Earth from another perspective.
Yeah, yeah, get some pretty cool photos. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, but that feeling you're talking about, I feel like is what really is what I'm like seeking. That
Hmm.
feeling that you finally have been. extracted from this world of thoughts and symbols and ideas, all men made, and all of a sudden you're just seeing it for what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I wish we could replicate that feeling and give it to more people. To be honest, given my experience and position in this world, I don't know if it would be the right thing to do. You know, I've played this game with my friends sometime. Like, what if you could just have a button that turns off all religions? I think it would be a horrible button to press. These stories do serve some value in our lives. I'm personally not religious, but I know for a lot of people, that's the story that keeps their identity put together.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
it's a hard thing to just kind of wish for everybody to be on the same page.
Hmm.
Even though it's fun, because every time you discover something like that, humbles you and gives you new perspective on life, you just want everybody else to know about it and think like that too. Um, but it's a complicated thing. All of us are here floating on this rock and suddenly, decided we're going to be conscious. And now let's come up with ideas and, constraints of reality that would keep us kind of grounded so we don't lose ourselves completely. I
Right.
guess maybe it's just a result of evolution. Evolution's like, hey, how can I make these people cooperate flexibly in large numbers? Just give them this idea that they can come up with all kinds of stories and kind of stick to them.
Yeah. Right. Separates us at the same time too, though. So it's, can't have the best of both worlds, I guess. But the most we
Right.
can do is just show people that perspective, and if they take it, they do, and if they don't, it is what it is. You can't force
Right.
everyone to
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
No, you can't. I agree 100%. And you have to keep in mind that, making an impact usually takes a long time. It's not a, one man changed everything type of deal.
Hmm.
But what I really like about these new platforms that are coming out, although it's a double-edged sword, is that and I'm specifically referring to TikTok and all these mediums of communication, is that they helped us discover so many people like yourself, um, that and also even Neil, right? The amount of exposure he got from TikTok alone, from people that would never see him because they're not searching, teach me something about astrophysics. But now they got that exposure is amazing, and I really attribute a lot of the um, advantage that we get from these platforms to these new mediums of communication that everybody can just use and show you how amazing they are at piano or how amazing their pictures are from the galaxy, but also they're kind of like weapons, because somebody with bad
Right.
intentions can use them to inflict horrible ideologies and thoughts that infiltrate generations, if you will, and cause
Right.
extreme divide. So that's why I say they're double edged, because you can get both sides of the story. But at least the thing that keeps me hopeful and happy is that I see people like yourselves and other creators sharing their worldview. And the thing that keeps me hopeful in it is that I see that they have a following. They have a lot of people excited about what they're doing. Hundreds of thousands of people, have gone through your page and are excited about what you're doing. And that makes me hopeful because they're not what some of us want to think of humanity, which is these creatures stuck glued to their TVs constantly, either on CNN or on Fox News and hating the other side or
Hmm.
whatnot. They're actually out there looking at, what I think most of us naturally have built in, which is this curiosity. And when we're quiet by ourselves with our phone and nobody's looking, we can go into these worlds that other people are willing enough to share with us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's
Totally.
pretty cool. I feel like it's awesome that you're doing it. But just taking a hard right. Let me ask you, what sparked the interest in astronomy, and did you have that kind of developed before you even got into photography, or is that something that kind of merged? How did it work for you?
Yeah. It's definitely been with me since I was a little kid.
Hmm.
So it was never, um, I didn't. Uh, yeah. It was just always with me ever since I was little. I've always just been into space and NASA and stuff like that. The Apollo missions and everything as a kid. It's like these crazy adventures, um, that you see other people go on, and from there, just kind of, I guess, kind of spiraled out of control into what I do now.
Right.
Getting all these
That's good.
telescopes and cameras and
Good,
stuff
out of
like that.
control.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so like I said, it's just I took that love for astronomy and my newfound hobby of photography and just combined the two.
Right.
Yeah, and luckily
So
there's a whole community out there, like you said. It's good to find a community and everything, and they've all been great, and it's been a really cool hobby.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's super cool. I really like getting into new hobbies nowadays because it's just not like what it used to be. Trying to be, come up with all these ideas and techniques and learn it the hard way. Now you can really get into a lot of things that you couldn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago with a relatively cheap, or a small budget.
yeah, yeah.
And everything has a tutorial, you know? It's almost hard
Mm-hmm.
to be creative at this point, because you want to find a certain, star group. Okay, let's type in into YouTube how to find this. Boom, it's there. Or find how to
Yeah,
use an editing program. Done.
yeah.
So it's cool because it gets you to a higher level faster than most could
Exactly.
have gone to, and
Yeah,
then from there it's up to you to develop it to the next level and be creative and be interesting in your creation, which also is something I wanted to bring up because yesterday or the day before that, I was talking to a guy on the podcast about creativity, and it was interesting his take on it. I didn't really think about it that way, although it makes all the sense in the world. That um, he was saying that good boys slash girls versus rebels. He was saying like who's more original, and a lot of people contribute originality to the rebel. And he
mm,
was saying, well, neither are really original because they're both um, are reacting to a external force. So the good boy just said, does what good boy slash girl does what they're told, and we like that because they go and get their good grades and whatnot and follow the strict rules and the paved path that is made for them. And then the rebel basically does the exact opposite. They're both
yeah.
reacting for something, waiting for it to be defined, and then deciding if they're going to do that or the exact opposite. But
Mm,
true creativity, the path of authenticity, I feel like is one of the hardest things to find, especially in art and photography, for example, because you're supposed to stop listening to all these external forces and start listening to this voice in yourself that's going to ask you to do things that you might think are dumb and maybe society are going to say is stupid and lame or whatnot. But that's where you're going to find it. That's you, for real. The
yeah.
one voice that really is your creative self. Do you try to tap into that when you're taking pictures, or you feel like you're kind of following a manual?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to astrophotography, I just, my priority is I shoot, what I want to shoot, and it's kind of hard because everyone's shooting the same objects, because these objects have been here, for as long as we have, or I mean a lot
Right.
longer. And but it always you always get a different image from everyone else because everyone has their own creative identity.
Mm.
You can give someone the exact same, photo of a deep space object, and they can, once they edit it, it'll look completely different from each other. Um,
Sure.
so everyone sort of has their, once you get into the groove of learning how to post process and everything, you sort of, like I said, come up with your own identity. How you process your images. Um, and so it's all different. When I scroll through my feed and I see other photographers, posting the same object, they all look completely different. Even though they're the
Right.
same, like I said, the same object. So it's
Yeah.
really cool, and that's how all of photography is. So I think that's how people keep going with this creativity. Even though, like you said, everything's already been thought of, everything's already been done. It's art. You always find something new with art, and I think that's really cool.
Right. Yeah, that's
Mm.
awesome. And I kind of remembered now something I wanted to ask you. You said you had, interest as a young kid in the Apollo missions and going to the moon and exploring space and whatnot. And it's a real thing nowadays. I was joking about it, before, like if we went right to the moon,
Mm.
and but it's not that uncommon for people to doubt that. And I also don't necessarily blame them because how would they know? If you don't know what you're talking about, you can just speculate freely, and that's pretty easy to do, just like flat Earth and um, QAnon or whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
Conspiracy theories has been around. It's easy to fall into them if you don't know what you're talking about, and if you're just gonna take some facts and use them to stick the story the way it makes sense to you.
Right.
But how do you feel about that, given that it was something that you were interested in as a kid, and um, is it something that you think they're kind of like violating a piece of history, or is it something that's, in your opinion, somewhat justified because knowledge around that area is extremely complicated, and it's a couple generations away now, and it's um, most common folks just don't understand much about how that works. Starting with rocketry, and then the technology that was required to go there, and even just astrophysics to the most basic level. We don't have a single class in high school about astrophysics. So, what's
Right.
your
And
opinion on that?
I think the unfortunate thing about that is it really boils down to these conspiracy theorists and everything like that. I think it really boils down to people just being uneducated about the topic they're um, theorizing about.
Hmm.
So, but I mean, it's pretty easy to do your own research and to come to the conclusion that yes, we have been to the moon, and yes, outer space is real, and the Earth is a globe. Um, and
I
you
mean,
mentioned
the Earth is a
before,
globe. I feel like is easier to prove than the whole missions to the moon.
yeah, yeah, it
I feel like
absolutely
there's
is.
more room to fuck around with the missions to the moon than there is
Mm,
with gravity and Earth is round and whatnot. I feel like that's easier to disprove. Actually, there's a really funny Netflix documentary. I think it's called Beyond the Curve or something like that.
yeah, oh yeah, I've
It's
heard about
basically,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it because the bottom line is, you watch this whole thing, right? And it's a group of people that are trying to disprove, the fact that the Earth is round and just, physics as we know it today. And in 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the documentary, you start realizing what this is all about. And the answer is it's about community. It has nothing to do with the Earth being round or flat or anything like that. Um, the subject of the community is the Earth is flat, but it could have also been, the Cashew Peanuts Club. The whole
yeah.
point is it's a group of people that found a family, they
Mm-hmm.
found a camp, they found meaning, and they found a reason to go to a conference. And some of them have status there because they're like the guy, that oh, he's been YouTubing about this forever, and these other guys,
Yeah,
come in there to find their friends and fist bump and have a good time. It's not really necessarily about that, and I feel like that's how all conspiracy theories slash gangs slash cults are.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not really
totally.
about the thing as much as it is about finding home for someone. And if you look at all the commonalities in these groups, is that these people usually didn't have a home before, or they were kicked out of their home slash community slash group of their tribe, whatever you want to call it. Um, and the funniest thing about the documentary, just to put a bow on it, is that they keep running these experiments that always fail.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
at the very, very end, there's this funny experiment where they're shooting a laser, and their theory is like, okay, if this Earth is round, like everybody's saying, then once we go far enough, we won't be able to see the laser, right? So they're using cameras and lasers on this stick, and they keep going further and further away until, mathematically speaking, it's supposed to not be able to see it anymore. And finally, they don't see it, right? And this other guy's like, wait, what? And then they're like, wait, can you bring it up a little bit? And then they see the laser and they go down. They can't see it anymore, which means that there's a curve
Yeah,
here. And
exactly. Yeah.
then they're like, that's how it ends. They're like, fuck.
Yeah, they end up just, and I think that's the case with most of their experiments in the documentary. They end up just proving themselves wrong the entire time, which is
But
hilarious.
the beautiful thing is, and you get it through watching the documentary, is that it doesn't matter. The thing that matters is I'm here to hang out with my flat Earth buddies.
Yeah, they're doing it
You
together,
know,
and that's yeah, yep. That's kind of the
it's
scary
and
part
when
too.
something doesn't work, then we'll do another thing. Because if we don't do another thing, then we won't have our group. You know what I mean?
Yeah, hmm
So it's kind of funny, and I feel like that's how a lot of these groups end up forming. They need this. Not all. Some conspiracy theories are actually vindictive, but I feel like the flat Earth and the whole thing about around the Apollo missions is kind of like a place to exist. Some people just get sucked into it because it's interesting, and then a lot of people get sucked into it deeper just because they found authority and the group and people that follow them and listen to them because of that,
right,
and it
right.
kind of snowballs out of control to the point that if I give up my theory about my flat Earth, then I lose my entire meaning in the world, right? So
Exactly. Yeah,
it's almost impossible to come out of there. It doesn't come from a scientific point of view where you obey the rules of science, that if something proves to be wrong, you're going to walk away from it, even if you've worked your entire life.
yep,
Most, even the greatest scientists, it takes a lot of humility to walk away from your life's work once you've proven yourself wrong. So you can't expect that from any common folk. It's just my opinion.
yeah.
But let me ask you about crazy stories doing this. You
Like
see
seeing
any
anything
aliens?
weird or so it's only happened once because usually everything we see can be explained, and that's the question I get a lot too. Like, have you seen anything you can't explain?
Mm-hmm.
And
How
yeah,
to
like I
know?
said, usually everything that I've seen is explainable, whether it's a piece of, whether it's like an old rocket body or whatever that's floating around, a
That's crazy.
satellite.
You've seen something like that?
You can actually see those with the naked eye too. Whenever I'm out in the
Really?
backyard and I see it, yeah. So that's the great thing about the Stellarium app is it shows the catalog of some space junk and major satellites too. Um, and whenever I see it, because it's reflecting the light of the sun, that's how you're able to see it. So it's just a constant
Right.
bright. It's not an airplane because there's no flashing lights. Um, and so I go to the app and I look, and it's like, oh, it's an old, Soviet rocket body from the '80s. Which is really cool. Yeah.
That's
Um,
insane.
yeah, or it's like a Starlink satellite or whatever.
Right.
But so, anyways, most of that stuff can be explained. But there was one thing that I still have no idea what it was. But I think this happened last winter. I was photographing the Orion Nebula, and I looked in the live feed because I have a separate little camera that takes photos and sort of notices if the mountain's drifting. It'll send information to my controller and say, hey, you got to fix yourself. So that takes a constant like loop of exposures, um,
Mm.
really quick exposures. Um, and I was looking, I just happened to be looking at the screen, and I see these like three little dots, in like a triangle kind of
Mm.
formation. Um, and they're all, they're moving from the right side to the left side of my frame, and they're all moving at the same speed, nice and slow. It threw me off because I was
That's
thinking,
freaky.
if it was like a Starlink satellite train, they'd be in a line. So then it's not Starlink. And I looked on the app, and it was nothing that was cataloged, in the app at least. Um, I thought, okay, well, maybe it's like space junk or like asteroids. Well,
Hmm.
why would they be traveling at the same speed? Keeping the
Yeah.
same distance
A
away from
group
each
of
other.
aliens flying in formation,
Yeah, so it's like, you
practicing
know,
some Blue Angel stuff.
yeah, giving me a little show. But yeah, so I have no idea what it was. I still have the video of it, so maybe. And I didn't do a lot of research either. There are like forums I could have went to and said, hey, I was pointed at this object at this time on this date, and people will like look, find better catalogs of like space junk and satellites and whatnot. And so more than likely it was one of those two. But it was just weird to me how they were moving and the speed at which they were moving. It just seemed a little too slow to be
Hmm.
satellite or whatever. So I don't know, but it was interesting.
That's
So,
crazy.
but yeah, it was just the one time, the one thing that was weird to me.
Yeah, I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people have that one story that something just didn't make sense, and a lot of times it's just explained, and other times we have no idea.
Hmm.
Um, I heard a lot of theories about is it possible that there's life outside of Earth, and a lot of people give you an interesting explanation of why it's statistically impossible,
Hmm.
and a lot of people say that statistically it has to be, which in my humble opinion I'm not even anywhere close to understanding even mathematics to a degree that I could feel comfortable saying which one is more correct. But it's almost like the natural gut feeling, outside the fact that we all just want something mysterious to happen, is that
Yeah.
it's so infinite that how can it possibly be that there's not another rock somewhere that has the conditions to create life? Wouldn't
Yeah.
you think?
There definitely are. Hubble has been looking at. Um, they're called exoplanets, Earth-like planets that could possibly inhabit life. There's also with the launch of the James Webb Telescope. That
I
once
heard
that
they dropped it.
launches, yeah, yeah, which is pretty scary. But apparently it's okay. But when that launches, it's going to be able to get a lot better at looking for exoplanets and studying existing ones. It's
You
even going
excited
to
for
look
that thing to be
for,
in the sky?
yeah, definitely. It's going to get some really cool images, and it's supposed to even look for artificial light in the atmospheres of those exoplanets. So if they're using,
Wow.
if they find any species that are using artificial light, James Webb will find it. Um, but yeah, I just think with the size of the universe and everything, there has to be, you know, uh, for life to take place, there's certain ingredients that your planet has to have, and it's uncommon, but it's not impossible for other planets to have those ingredients. And I definitely think there's life out there, but the real question is there intelligent life out there?
Hmm.
That to me is the real question. And I think there is, but they're probably just so far away and so um, vast. It's just you know the chances of running into another like extraterrestrial species to me is super small. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. Even in an infinite universe, just narrowing down the chances of just a habitable place, and then
right.
something that also developed intelligent life. I mean, that's a lot of ifs, and a lot of narrowing down your statistics to an
Yeah.
extent that is, yeah.
Yeah.
There's even the likelihood that there's nothing.
Yeah. Especially with the age of the universe too. So we could be at that point where intelligent life, is still relatively new, and we may be the very first intelligent species. So there may not be
Hmm.
anyone else out there yet. Um,
Yeah.
but another interesting thing is too that like I said, with the age of the universe, we could be, there could be a lot of other species out there, but they've already died off, things like that. They couldn't advance to a certain level. And that's what, there are these things called great filters that we have to pass. And the next filter we're coming up on is mutual destruction. So, like nuclear war, things like that, things that'll like end our species. Uh,
Hmm.
Climate change, things that are like progressively getting worse. So that's another, like I said, one of those great filters that we have to pass. So it may just be,
Right.
we're just incapable of passing those filters, and that's why we haven't seen any life, any evidence of that. But it's interesting, nobody really knows, so it's all just
Right.
theories and
History
speculation
will
for now.
tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I do have some questions about your equipment, but you've already tickled me to ask you something else. I'm having another guest on the podcast later in January that has to do with just theorizing and studying ancient civilizations. And what are your thoughts on already, I know this is kind of like getting a little bit out of the scope here, but the fact that we had civilizations that were more advanced than us, and kind of somehow wiped out by, I don't know, a flood, a ice age. Is that something you think is possible?
I think it's interesting. Yeah, I'm not nearly educated enough on that topic, but I think it's interesting, and I've heard what other people have to say, and it's definitely something to consider. You know, the level at that some of these. I always think about the ancient Egyptians when I hear that. You know
Mm,
how mathematically perfect they were at building the pyramids and how ingenious their irrigation canals were and everything. Um,
right.
so I definitely think we don't give them enough credit, because people automatically theorize that, oh, aliens helped them. I just think that they were really really smart people, um,
Right.
and so that's interesting to me. But that's like all I can say. I'm not really educated on that, but
Right. Yeah,
it's
it's
really cool.
total
Yeah.
fantasy land.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just feel like it's possible. The guy that's gonna come on, his name is Rivis Orion. He has I think he has over 1 million followers on TikTok, and super interesting guy. I'll link him too here. It's it's kind of weird somehow how accurate they were, almost kind of like supernatural level.
It is. Yeah.
Some people say, ah, they're just they made a nice perfect triangle. What are you so excited about? And then others are like, finding all these details in it, like Rivas, and it does kind of blow your mind. Um, so maybe there was some level of intelligence that is, outside what we're used to considering today, like in our senses, that was deployed to, you know, do what we did, build the buildings we were doing, or put together structures that today seem, kind of like how in the fuck do we do that back then with the tools we had?
Yeah.
So
It's mind-boggling for sure.
yeah, we'll
Yep.
see. I'll pick his brain for sure when he gets here.
Yeah. It sounds
Um,
interesting.
yeah, let me ask you about equipment. Um, yeah, camera. Most of us know how to pick up and take a picture and whatnot, but these rigs you're using, they look, interstellar. They don't make sense. There's a lot going on, and I don't even understand how is it possible that we can buy a consumer grade piece of equipment that can track a star
Mhm.
so freaking far away with all the
Yeah.
movements that are happening, all these axes. Like there's so much going on. How do you go about like picking what you're going to aim at a certain day, and then how does your equipment go about executing on that properly, and how much intervention does that require from you?
Yeah. So um, I pick objects based on the season, moon phase, stuff like that. And then once I pick a target, um, I then the tracking mount. It has a database. Mine, for example, has a database of over 42,000 objects that are cataloged.
So
So
that's built into the
galaxies,
tracker.
right? It's built into the hand controller. The brains of the mount. Um, and I basically tell the mount, where it's pointed at, and I, you know, tell it where to go. Um, but I actually use a different system, so I don't really even touch because the tracking mount comes with the hand controller. You type in all the info, but I have a separate like Raspberry Pi computer that basically runs everything. My cameras, I'm sorry, the mount, um, filter wheels, focusers, things like that. Um, and so that uh, Raspberry Pi, I have an app that connects to it because it has a Wi-Fi hotspot, and I type in, the coordinates of the object, and it slews to where it thinks it is. And one really cool thing that I like about this is it does this thing called plate solving, where it takes an image real quick just to get a view of a star field, and it looks at where the stars are positioned, and it knows exactly where it's pointed, and it knows exactly where it needs to move to line up with
Hmm.
the coordinates I typed in, as to
Wow,
like where this deep sky object is. So you can get,
that's an amazing piece of
exactly.
technology.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool. Um, and it's very smart too. So, like I said, it plate solves, to know exactly where it's at, and so that's how I point to the objects that I shoot. if you're on a budget though, you have to do it manually, which is, I respect those people because I did that for a little bit, and I just couldn't do it. I had to upgrade, and that was the first thing I upgraded. Was I bought a new mount that allowed that type of capability. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it's
Is
really cool
there?
though.
Do you think there's like a hardcore old schoolers out there that they're just doing
Yeah,
it manually every time?
yeah. There's purists out there that and mainly they're visual astronomers too, so they don't take photos. Um, but I've seen the old guys with their big telescopes that have a motor built into it that lets them go to whatever object they want, but they turn that off. They do it all manually, and I respect that. I couldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's just a part of their
But
fun, just
it
going
is,
exploring and
yeah.
navigating through the galaxy.
There's no specific way to do this hobby, so it's just whatever you want. There's no wrong way. Um,
Right.
so yeah,
That's cool. So before we close, it's pretty cool that they called that big telescope James. Um,
yeah.
who's James Webb, by the way? I'm sorry for the not
I
knowing.
actually I don't know either. It's a good question.
Right? Has
I
to be somebody
know.
important.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm gonna guess
We'll look
probably
him
another
up.
famous astrophysicist or astronomer.
We're gonna Google him.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but so if we do find anything interesting there, do you think we have any technology right now that's gonna be helpful to go somewhere? Because as of right now, I feel like we're pretty constrained to
Yeah.
relatively close places.
Yeah. Even so, our closest star is 4 light years away, and so the fastest spacecraft we have right now, which is the Voyager, I think is the Voyager 1 or 2 probe. Um, it would take, I think, about 35,000 years to even reach that star. So we're so far away from even being able to think about going to those places, which sucks. But even sending out radio waves or things like that, it would take years and years to get there, and then another decades to even get a response if there is someone there.
Right.
So definitely don't have the means to contact them or to go there, but it's cool to know, like I said, if James Webb finds, there's a planet with inhabitants on it, it'd be cool to know that, to answer that question, are we alone in the universe? It'd be pretty
Sure.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the biggest questions ever. I did
Hmm.
see something cool. I think it was Bill Nye. He was explaining the concept of laser sailing. Have you seen anything like that?
I haven't.
It's pretty cool. I don't know how practical it is. I know they're already doing solar sailing, and
Yeah.
also a project he was involved in, which is basically this huge sail, if you will. And apparently, I didn't even know that if you point a light at something, photons actually do have energy discharging and pushing something away. So essentially, if you're holding a flashlight to someone's light, you're very slightly pushing them away, not anywhere
Interesting.
enough to feel. But when you do that in a vacuum, like in space, then essentially you are pushing that thing, right? Because it doesn't have any friction or anything drag that's stopping it from moving forward or in a certain direction. If you're pointing a light strong enough, like a laser, you can push the object eventually closer and closer and closer until it's very, very close to the speed of light. And that's how they're talking about potentially doing it. But, it's
That would
going to
be
be like a
cool.
state-sized laser to
Yeah.
move one person.
Yeah, that'd
So,
be pretty interesting.
yeah, it's an interesting technology, and they're already doing something like that with the sun. So they have deployed a satellite that has this solar sail, and it's using the light coming off the sun to navigate through space and do all these cool missions, like going behind the sun and coming back.
Right.
And they deploy it when they want to move a certain direction, then close it when they want to keep floating a certain other direction. So it's pretty awesome. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm very excited to see what comes back from this James Webb first
Yeah.
few images.
It's
They'll
gonna
be
be really
pretty
cool.
crazy.
Yeah.
Just like an alien photo bombing it, like
Yeah.
right in front of the lens or something.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it's they're collecting, like you said, photons. These photons are trillions and trillions of miles away on unfathomable distances. just to land on, that camera sensor, just to end its journey, on your camera sensor. It's the same thing, here too. It's a month ago or so, I photographed the Andromeda galaxy, and that's 2.5 million light years away. So it's always cool to think about, those photons of light traveled in the vacuum of
All
space
the way
for
from there.
2.5 million years, just to physically land on my camera sensor. That's
That's
always,
unfathomable. Is my only way of
yeah,
putting it.
yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's
There's a lot of things that, in this hobby that just, like I said, give you that existential crisis. Like, wow, we are tiny, but it's really cool.
what are we doing? Walking around here with clothes, telling people what to do and how to act and what to drive.
Right? Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it's
None of it
also
matters.
silly. Yeah, we,
Yeah.
we really don't matter that much. The only thing that matters is what you care to matter about, I guess.
All right. That's why I always say we gotta do something that matters, and we gotta, do something good with our lives. And, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, good luck for all of us to try to break up out of that story of you know, society and going through that path and having that American dream or whatever every country wants to call it. You know, um,
Yep.
work all your
Yep.
life and break your back until you get to retirement. Like, here's your dream.
Right.
It's uh, it's actually interesting. I'm listening to a book right now called 1984. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. George Orwell, right? Or
Yep.
yeah.
Super
Yep.
fun and it's kind of like very very relevant. It feels like.
It's
Um,
becoming more and more true, huh? It's
yeah,
weird.
it
Yeah.
feels like something that when he wrote was kind of like haha fiction, because we were going through the golden ages of the USA and everything was kind of fun and it was probably not even as popular because it was just like crazy fiction for fictional novel people.
Yeah.
But then you read it today and you're like, shit, this
Yeah.
is this is kind of coming about, you
Right.
know,
Man.
with the thought police. And I'm not gonna give out any spoilers, so I'll leave a link for that book also because it's awesome. But yeah, I hope we can, like you said, use these mediums and platforms of communication to promote, inspire, and push people to not only see and gain awareness around fields that they haven't known anything about, but also um, gain interest in it and want to do something that they feel like is worthy of their time. And I don't know why. I might be just an optimist. I know I'm an optimist. Maybe it's just my optimism. Is I feel like we are going that way. There is some kind of a shift, and maybe even COVID has something to do with it. Like people got stuck at home, and they're like, "Oh, I kind of like home."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden they like go to the gym whenever they want and work from the house. They're more productive, work less, make more, and things are kind of like pushing towards finding yourself again. And maybe we got uncomfortable for a minute, but then we found out things we wanted to fix about ourselves, whether it was like our mental health or our weight or our relationship. It kind of has positive implications that if you really look in between, reading in between the lines, you're like, okay, maybe this fast forwarded us like 10 years in personal progress, and we're kind of finding ourselves um, dealing with the things that are important a little earlier in life. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah. Definitely. I think, I got into astrophotography like right when COVID went down. Um,
Mm,
looking back, I don't really know if it was, because of COVID I took this up, or
mm.
it was just like a weird coincidence, of timing.
Just
But
happens
yeah,
to be.
definitely, yeah, that everything shutting down really like helped me, focus on myself and uh, looked inward, if you will,
Sure.
at what I really want to do. Um, so yeah, it's definitely interesting. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it makes for stronger individuals when you deal with yourself, look inwards, like you said, and
yeah,
make
definitely.
up what you want to be and who you want to be. And when you go out to society, you're already figured out, so you don't have to go around being a peacock trying to pretend to be something you're not. If you feel
Exactly.
whole with yourself,
Yeah.
um, so I feel like self discovery and just spirituality in general could be helpful for
Yep.
for all of us to get a little bit more into.
Man, I think looking up at the stars definitely helps with that too. Yep.
Amen. We can close on that. Well,
Yep.
awesome, James. I really appreciate you jumping on and putting all that kit together to get
Yeah,
on
no
the
problem.
podcast.
Yeah, thank you for
It's
having me. I
awesome.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun talking to you.